Okay. Well, I've returned. I am refreshed, and I have refreshment. As you all, well, for any of you who are here, I had some problems with Acrobat last night, and it was really eating up the PDF files, and um, like they're sort of like tearing across the screen. Anyway, I complete I reset. I nuked it from orbit and I reinstalled Adobe Acrobat, and everything is held fine. I've been able to scroll through things. I've been able to open up bookmarks. I've been able to flip around, and I haven't closed it since last night because I figured if there's a memory leak, if I just let it go, then it would leak, and it hasn't. So whatever I did by getting rid of the old and in with the new, then cool. It's working, and we can keep at it together here. Now, last night and continuing into tonight, we made a the stereotypical starter character, right? The male human fighter, the bread and butter, the Mario of Smash Brothers, the Ryu of Street Fighter. This is the tried and true classic of about every system. So following the rules of character creation, we ended up making a character that I named Jyorn Smythe, a very original and creative fantasy name. No one would ever suspect Jyorn Smythe of being any kind of a starter figure. Now, I did have to amend some of the equipment as I was going through, because we rolled for hit points, and we also rolled for gold, and our starting gold was 50, and our starting hit points was 5. With the way that we set out our with the way that we set out uh, our attributes. I was gonna say ability. It's attribute in this game. Our attributes here. Um, we ended up, even though we do have a 12 in con, we had a +0. The bonuses or the modifiers are on a flatter curve in Castles and Crusades than they are a 2-for-1 in D&D. Pardon. So after going through things, I gave him a pretty standard outlay of equipment, especially given the ideas that were talked about, where he's just starting in the Adventurers Guild and he wants to make something of himself and prove himself and eventually become the leader of the Adventurers Guild. And so to do that, strength was necessary because he's a fighter. So that is the primary attribute of the 3 humans get. That's fixed. Then in chat here, we gave him Dex and Charisma. And the Charisma is part of what was fueling the story about him being that up-and-coming adventurer. So I said, all right, what would someone who wants to go out and prove himself as a leader, what would he need, or what would he... he needs to live up to the Smythe name, a very long line of average adventurers. That's their claim to fame, is they've always been around. Sometimes they did cool stuff, and more than a few of them ended their careers early. But overall, the Smythes are, they're there. Of all the members of the Adventurers Guild, Jyorn Smythe is absolutely one of them. Like luggage, just can't seem to get rid of the Smythes. So a halberd was recommended for this character. Well, not like recommended, like, oh, I've played this for 10 years and this is my favorite weapon. You get a weapon specialization as a fighter. Halberd was chosen by a member of the audience. And so that was our first weapon here. Of course, everyone needs a trusty dagger. And I figured we could go for something that is ranged that isn't our dagger. And so we had the good old-fashioned sling, because this can also showcase... Pardon. This can also showcase the differences between ranged weapons. And what do I mean by that? In this system, if you attack with melee, it's off of strength. So for our halberd, I'll make this a little bit bigger here, so hopefully it's easier for you all to see. Our bonus to hit is 1 at level 1. Our mod from strength is 1. And we get a miscellaneous because it's our weapon specialization. It is, so we have a total of a +3 to hit with this weapon at level 1. Now, when we're dealing damage, it's 1d10, pretty straightforward, plus our modifier, in this case, it's 1. And our miscellaneous is 1 because that is also what our weapon specialization gives us. So we roll to hit at a +3, and then we roll 1d10 plus 2 for our damage. If we're attacking melee with our dagger, and I specified this, I went a little above and beyond on the sheet. If you're making Jyorn Smythe yourself, you probably don't need to do this. But because I wanted to demonstrate the character, I wanted things to be clearer. So if we're attacking with a dagger in melee, our to hit is a 1, then our mod off of strength is 1, so we have a +2 to hit. It deals 1d4 plus 1 damage, because we're not getting the bonus off of weapon specialization. Now, if we throw the dagger, it has a range of 20 feet. It only has a +1 to hit as a missile, because missile weapons are off of dexterity. They're off of dex to hit. However, if the weapon is thrown, the damage includes a strength bonus on it. And so it's 1d4 plus 1 damage thrown. What you see here with the sling, which is a missile weapon, so it's ranged, in particular, a missile weapon. We only have a +1 to hit because that's our basic our basic hit bonus, right? Our 2 hit. And our dexterity modifier is +0. So we have a +1 to hit with our sling, range of 50 feet. The damage is 1d4. As this is a propelled weapon, it is just 1d4, and there's no bonus on it. I put +0. I think that's confusing because we actually have a bonus of +0. Propelled weapons get their damage die, unless there's something else that's modifying it, like it's magical or a higher quality or, you know, other things. If this is a regular old sling, then we deal 1d4. Actually, it would probably be less confusing if I take dex off as well. Just with that note, that it's dex to throw and dex to fire the missile. But you only get a strength bonus to thrown weapons, and there is not a damage bonus from dex to propelled weapons. We have 5 hit points because that's what was rolled. It was a d10. A 5 was rolled, and our constitution modifier is +0. So yes, we are a level 1 fighter. And yes, our AC is 13. We don't get to add any dexterity to it because our dexterity mod is 0. We started last night with a helmet. In fact, it was a very nice armet. And it wasn't in the budget. So unfortunately, well, you know what? OSHA doesn't exist right now, so the Adventurers Guild can get away with it. But we are adventuring without a helmet currently. I know. It's a little dangerous. Because we used to have a 16 AC on our head, but we had to sell it for money. You know, that's the adventurer's life, though, right? The only real benefit, like the racial ability of humans, is you get a 3rd primary attribute, and we chose charisma for it. Pretty straightforward. We don't have any special senses or anything along those lines. Now, when it comes down to the budget, we started with 50 gold. And I bought what you see here. And I'm going to explain what you see on the character what you see on the character sheet. All right. I split the columns into different considerations. Now, there are character sheets. For example, here's one. This one is specifically for rangers and fighters, because it has notes in particular, as those are both strength primary, strength attribute primary classes. But if you look on this character sheet, you can see that they have the gear split up, you know, different things. So what I did here is we have these 3 columns. I said, all right, let's make a column. Let's make a column on equipped items. So these are things that we were carrying around. Or things that we're wearing. So we have our halberd, and we have studded leather, and I put the encumbrance, the encumbrance of number of each. So a halberd, yeah, it weighs 15 pounds. And you might go, wait a minute, how is a halberd 15 pounds but an encumbrance of 5? But studded leather is 20 pounds and only an encumbrance of 3. In the rules review, this value is not just weight. It is the ease of carrying things. It's the dimensions. It's properties of the thing. So it's a bit of a nebulous number. It's not just the weight. You're going to really see that come into play with our backpack. And then I also bought a whistle, because if we have someone who wants to be a team leader or something, I believe that you should have a whistle. Now, the whistle entry doesn't say anything about keeping it on a string around your neck. I imagined that that's what the case was. And so I listed whistle as an equipped item. But it has a negligible encumbrance, so there's a dash there. Now, we go over to a backpack. Ah, yes, every adventurer needs a backpack. So we bought a backpack, and as you see, it weighs 2 pounds. It has a capacity of 8. What does capacity of 8 mean? And I'll get to that. You also see that I have the encumbrance at 2. And I have brackets around it because that's what the total encumbrance for this column is. If we look at what is inside the backpack can hold 8 items. And so that's why I X'd out these last 3 down here. In order to keep the focus on, we have effectively 8 item slots in our backpack. That is capacity 8. Or rather, it's part of capacity 8. Capacity 8 also means that of the 8 items, no item in the backpack can be at or greater the capacity value. In other words, we can't put our halberd, oh wait, no, we can. I was thinking, I combined the total of our armor. But I don't know, let's say that, we have, a plate armor is probably, encumbrance of, I don't know, 10 or something? I'd have to look it up. Anyway, just roll with me on this. We can't put plate armor in our backpack because the encumbrance of that one item, even though, I mean, armor's a lot of items, that one item has an encumbrance at or greater than the capacity. So this means in your backpack, you can have 8 items of 7 or less encumbrance each. And I missed some comments here. GMV says, Smythe was in the dungeon and we were fighting these nasty little goblins. We were beating them pretty good until Smythe tripped over a rock and split his noggin open. Goblin of Gygaxor says, doubling up on the bonuses for thrown weapons I don't allow. If you're throwing with all your strength, your precision is going to suffer. Goblin Gygaxor says, capacity 8 is the name of my after-hours bar out in the garage. Now, the benefit of having an item, a container like a backpack, is... while each of these items has an encumbrance of, let's see, 3, 4, 7, 8, of 11, if they're contained in this item, which is meant to distribute the weight and be carried easily, then the backpack and its quantity will be 2. So right now, if we're holding our halberd and we're wearing studded leather armor, a whistle around our necks, and we have a backpack that's this full and has 3 slots open for other things, our encumbrance is 10, and we can carry 17. Now, we're going to up that a little bit because the good old-fashioned belt pouch. And what happens with a belt pouch in this game? Pardon. Your belt has a capacity on its own. It can hold 2 large containers and 1 small container. A large container, in this case, that could be a large belt pouch. Could be 1 large pouch equals 1 quiver of bolts or arrows, 1 scabbard for, so 1 scabbarded weapon, 1 spell component pouch, or you can have 2 small belt pouches. And I said, okay, let's play around with this and see what we can do. Let's get a large belt pouch, which has a capacity 2 And yet, anything we put in there will only weigh 1. But remember, this means that we can hold 2 items at most, and none of those items can be greater than 1 encumbrance. Because whatever's inside a container can't match or exceed the capacity. Now, in this case, you could probably talk to your castle keeper, your DM, GM, ST, right? The castle keeper, the CK in this game. And you can say, well, Flint and Steel doesn't have an encumbrance. Would you have that take up a slot in the large belt pouch? Because there's not a specific rule about that. Could I put the whistle in with the Flint and Steel and the chalk? Because the whistle also doesn't have an encumbrance value. And your castle keeper might say, yeah, you know what? That seems reasonable. Because that's the ultimate litmus test in the rules of this game. You know, you're welcome to modify the rules, but just ask yourself before anything else, does it seem reasonable? But sticking with this, let's put a big, you know, a chunk of, because it's half a pound of chalk. Let's put a chunk of chalk in a large belt pouch and our Flint and Steel. Then let's wear two small belt pouches. Okay, we have our coins in one of them, and 160 coins is 1 encumbrance. We certainly have less than that here. We only have 20 coins. So we know our coins are contained in a small belt pouch. Now, where I made an error is a sling has an encumbrance of 1, meaning that a sling theoretically cannot fit inside a small belt pouch, meaning that we might have to wear it on our belt, or we keep it in our backpack, in which case it may not be easy to draw if combat starts and we need our sling. Or you might argue, I mean, hopefully not argue, you might make the point with your castle keeper, well, if a sling is really just a, you know, a little leather pocket on some strings, couldn't I just, like, curl it up and keep it in a little pouch with 15 stones? And maybe your castle keeper says, you know what, that seems reasonable because that's what you're measuring for. How reasonable is it? That's what I was thinking at first, although this does have an not the stones. The stones have a negligible weight. So in this instance, maybe we say that the sling, you know what, we're not the best with it. We keep it around, maybe if we need it for something. So the sling would end up moving maybe into our backpack. But the encumbrance of our backpack doesn't change because 1 is below the cap of 8, and we still haven't met all 8 slots in our backpack. But now we have a pouch for our stones. We have a pouch for our coins. We have a pouch for some chalk and Flint and Steel. And then we come down to the dagger. Now, the rules describe a large as a scabbarded weapon. The dagger does come in a scabbard. And this would be another conversation to have with your castle keeper. Would a dagger count as a small item on the belt or a large item on the belt? Because what else would be in a sheath? A short sword or a longsword. Comparing that, those might be larger items, as they're both heavier and would take, maybe slightly greater time to extract. Whereas a knife or a dagger might only be smaller. And if that's the case, then we have our large, we have one large, we have our second large because we have our two smalls, and then we have a small item on our belt. Our belt is at capacity now. Hi, Belladonna. Now, if your castle keeper says, no, pulling a dagger, pulling a short sword or a long sword, pulling an axe out of a loop on the belt, it's all kind of the same. In that case, maybe you'd have to move your dagger into your backpack then, because otherwise you need to carry your halberd in two hands, right? And so we can't keep it sheathed, or we'd have to throw our belt pouch with our stones in our backpack. There could be a little hemming and hawing. I would not want any of you to get into actual arguments over this stuff. Go with what you think makes sense. If you say, yeah, I don't care, it's a dagger, you can have a dagger on your belt, I'll count it as a small. It's fine. But we're going to have to talk if you're upgrading it to a gladius or something bigger. That seems reasonable. And if everyone at the table's playing the same way, and you run your goblins and your other monsters the same way, there you go. So this is how the equipment was laid out. So in total, we're carrying 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Meaning we can carry an encumbrance of 3 more units of something before we hit our burdened status. And burdened has some slight penalties and goes up to 3 times our encumbrance value, our EV. And then if you go over that, then you are overburdened, and there's greater penalties for being overburdened. So of course we have 5'8", 151 pounds, black hair, brown eyes. This person, Jyorn Smythe, our level 1 male human fighter, was born in Hero, the city of Hero in the great state of Zonia. We didn't fill this in. We talked about some aspects. I didn't write them when I was going over this because I wanted to make sure that the math was working. But hopefully you can see what is going on here with Jyorn Smythe. And while a fighter and is receiving no particular manifested blessings of a deity, we do have Jyorn here invoke his deity by Gob. Anytime something strange or perilous might happen. So hopefully this is making sense. Everything is pretty straightforward. If you want to roll a skill in this game, skill is really just, it comes back to an attribute check that might have some modifiers depending on what's going on, whether it's a primary or a secondary attribute, or if you have a particular bonus to an action offered by your race or your class. So we have a 13 AC, as we're wearing studded leather armor. We are helmetless, but hopefully if we go out on our first adventure, we'll survive, we'll earn some coin, and we can buy a helmet so that our head AC is more than 10. Because otherwise, it's 10 plus dex. And we have a 0 dex modifier. Any questions so far from all of you out there? from what I've gone over on our first level character. We don't need to worry about spells. We don't have magic items. I listed that we do have 15 stones. We have 1 day of food and water, right? 1 gallon of water. We have 1 day of rations. And this was our change that was left over from the shopping trip above. And like any other game, you can shop for a lot of minutia. There's a lot of neat items. Will they come in handy? Maybe, maybe not. Because if there are no questions, then we can level up. We can level up Jyorn Smythe and find out what happens when a fighter reaches level 2, and so on and so forth. Although before we do that, I want to... We're going to save male human fighter 1. Should just save. Okay. Let me double check. Yes, I know it already exists. I'd like to save over, please. All right, so we have that. So I should be able to save a different copy. Okay. All right. So yeah, that should work. All right. So level 1, Jyorn Smythe. Congratulations on a life of adventure. Now, it's a very good question, especially if you all are coming in from Dungeons and Dragons, and you go, oh, a level 1 fighter has 5 hit points and 13 AC, and only a +3 to hit. How is this going to work against enemies? And Goblin of Gygaxanor, you might need to cover your goblin ears. Because I have a goblin, and just look at this vicious creature. This is the bane of civilizations everywhere. Okay, let's take a look at a monster entry. What is it that Jyorn Smythe might presumably be sent out to fight in his beginning adventures? So here we have the humble goblin. Goblins have a recommended number between 2 and 12, or 40 and 400. But you as the castle keeper, if you just want 1, then run it as 1. They are small. They have 1 hit die, which is a D6. So they can have anywhere between 1 and 6 hit points. And if you want to take the average, 3 or 4, this goblin has less hit points than our fighter does. Now you can see that the armor class is higher, though. We have a 15. So in order for Jyorn Smythe to hit, he is going to need a 12 or better. Now, there are ways to get bonuses in combat to hit. Not just on a weapon, like it's, like a master crafted weapon or magical or something. You could go into like a flank, you could get the drop on them. However, it seems very likely that once Jyorn Smythe lands a blow, this goblin is donezo, right? Its saves are physical. Physical are the primary. It can move 20 feet. Now, mind you, we can outmaneuver a goblin with 30. Attacks are by weapon, so that just depends on the type of weapon that you want the goblin to wield. It has 60 feet of dark vision. Its intelligence is average. You interpret that as the castle keeper what you will. What does average intelligence mean? And run that monster as such. Suggested alignment, lawful evil. But if you want a lawful good goblin, like Goblin of Gygaxanor, instead of lawful evil, cool. Or you don't want to play with alignment, cool, then don't. It does count as humanoid. Treasure 1, that's for later. And XP is, yay, 5. 5 plus 1. You're gonna, by the way, sorry, Goblin of Gygaxanor, you might want to cover your ears again. In order for a fighter to reach 2nd level, I think you need something like a little over 1,200 experience points. So, our fighter, if all he fights is goblins, is going to be on a hunt. Is going to be on a hunt. You might ask, all right, well, what's the 2-hit for our goblin? Monsters get a their chance to hit is equal to their hit die. So we may only have a 13. We may only have a 13 armor class. However, the goblin also needs a 12 or greater to hit us. And may well be dealing less damage if wielding a knife or a dagger as a small creature. So, one-on-one, a goblin versus a level 1 fighter here. There's a very good chance that Jyorn is going to make it out alive. But let's see what the book says about goblins. Goblins are diminutive, vicious, and thoroughly evil humanoid creatures. They have large bulbous heads, small eyes, and typically have a drab green or gray skin tone to match their native environment. These creatures prefer mountainous, hilly, forested, and rough terrains for their lairs, the better to hide from other races. But they will call anywhere home, often migrating in huge numbers when the tribe outgrows the lair. They are prodigious diggers, living in warrens carved out of hillsides, mountain slopes, beneath the roots of trees, or wherever else they settle. Their warrens can grow to monstrous size, dark, fulsome depths, and maddening complexity. Goblin tribes number up to 400 warriors, with several tribes sometimes making up a great goblin horde. While most goblin warriors are simply one hit die with no special abilities, 1 in 10 will be elite warriors, first level fighters. Approximately 1 in 100 will be a clan chieftain, a 2nd to 4th level fighter. Tribes with 200 or more warriors will also be led by a tribal king, a 5th to 7th level fighter, advised by or sometimes controlled by a shaman vizier of equal level. The shaman will himself be served by a number of 1st to 4th level acolytes equal to his level. There is a 10% chance the tribe will also have 1 to 4 goblin rogues or assassins, 60-40, of 1st to 6th level. The lair will also be home to a number of females equal to 120% of the males, juveniles equal to 150% of the warriors, and whelps equal to 200% of the warriors. Altogether, a single goblin warren can hold upward of 2,000 goblins. Many tribes also keep wargs as steeds. There's a 30% chance the tribe will have 1 warg per 20 goblin warriors, and the lair will hold a number of warg. Can I say this word? It's a PG-13 stream. We're talking the female dog sense. We'll have a number of warg bitches equal to the warg steeds, and pups equal to steeds and bitches together. Shamans use the wizard and illusionist spells per day chart and know exactly that number of spells without any bonus spells. Combat. Goblins only attack if they are confident of victory, whether by greater numbers or some infallible trap. They carry all manner of arms, particularly favoring axes, clubs, mallets, and spears. They use bows occasionally, wear leather and metal ring garments for armor, and carry simple wooden shields. There you go. I mean, here's the stats. And when it says that a goblin might be a first level fighter, well, it's still HD1. However, you could simply apply fighter and give the goblin a weapon specialization, and maybe have it wear armor that the others don't, because you get the armor, all armor, all shields. The classes are a template to throw on. If you wanted to make a goblin that was, let's say, approximately 1 in 100 will be a chieftain. So you make a chieftain, which is a 4th level fighter. So it has 4 hit die. It has a +4 to hit. And its damage will be whatever the weapon it's wielding. And if it's, you want to give it, you know, a particular strength, then you can. You're going to give it like a bonus or something, right? It's easy and malleable. You don't get fixed stat blocks per se. I hope that this is making sense to you all in how this is working. In the monster manual of D&D, you get something, you know, you get challenge rating, and it gives you the stats. And if you want to write out the stats for a goblin, you absolutely can. You can create a sheet like this, or something more abbreviated. Maybe something like this, like a horse animal companion familiar, just like, you know, throw it on a note card, because they're your goblins that you can customize. The concept of challenge rating is I'd have to double check, but you don't get something like challenge rating. I'm sure there's suggestions for builds. I haven't gotten to that part yet, but I did want to show that if we have just a generic goblin, you know, especially if the goblin's holding a dagger, then our fighter can put the goblin away, and that is that. You've earned your experience points, and you are well on the way to level 2. All right, now what happens? These goblins have a shaman or other spellcaster types. Yeah, so you would apply illusionist or wizard to the base goblin, and if you don't like the percentages, or, you know, these are suggestions like everything else. Everything else in the book here. If you want to stat out your goblin warrens to be different than this, then go ahead. Yeah, you'd match the character levels versus the monster hit dice. So a 1 hit die goblin is good for a 1 hit die fighter. 4 1 hit die goblins would be good for 4 1 hit die characters in a party. Presumably, a chieftain that's a level 4 fighter, 1 hit die 4 chieftain would match 4 1 hit die party members. But in just about every system, I mean, the closest that was actually more like clockwork was actually 4th edition D&D. Challenge rating or an equivalent is it's also up to the dice roll and the strategies. But you definitely get a lot of flavor out of this, because you're seeing concepts written here that maybe you're not used to this kind of verbiage or freedom. maybe you're used to systems that just will stat every monster for you. So you don't have to worry about adding on to things. But that is part of the ease of the siege system, in that all you have to do is throw some characteristics on a goblin and give it some hit points, and there you go. And especially if you have a note sheet like this, this is the Ranger and Fighter character sheet in particular. This is giving you what you get at different levels. And this is telling you the combat maneuvers that you are capable of doing. So these are all, I mean, you could kind of think of these as stat block additions, that if you wanted to write out something more formal, but you're seeing a very straightforward stat block that you can customize however you'd like. And if you don't want to make your Warren up with those percentages, change it. If any of you out there, started reaching for your pearls when you saw this is a role-playing game, and in one of the core rule books, they said the B word. Number one, it is. I mean, that's the term, but also, this is part of the presentation of the world in which you're adventuring, right? This is a more straightforward. Perhaps it is. It might feel more blunt or brusque, brusque. Because things are also deadlier. We only have 5 hit points. That's also why there's a note in the average intelligence of goblins. Oops. Goblins will only attack if they're confident of victory. So, like, a single goblin would probably run away before fighting. Now, your world, your rules, you change it however you want. But this is also why you tend to see larger numbers of goblins, and why fighting a goblin is both a big deal and also may not be a big deal. You can catch one out in the open, and it's alone. Oh, it's good as gone. But if the others come and back up the fight, then it can start getting dangerous. Here, let's look at gnolls. Gnolls are Belladonna has a soft spot for gnolls. We have a 2-hit die creature. Here, a weapon could be any weapon, or the gnoll can make a slam attack. Oh, no, there we go. All right. So it's telling you 2d4. What's the 2-hit? +2, because you base it off the hit die. Gnolls are humanoids with the heads of jackals, coyotes, hyenas, and other scavengers. They are tall and gangly, if mighty thewed, averaging 7 feet in height or more, and have gnarled, shaggy limbs that end in sharp, clawed hands. They are completely covered in reddish-yellow fur. Gnolls are found in many climes and most temperate zones. They are brutish and stupid, if cunning and canny, and work together only through an instinctual pack mentality, without any concept of the greater good. Gnolls possess little material culture of their own, using weapons and tools looted from other peoples. Gnolls migrate in large, loose tribal associations, forming groups of 20 to 300. They live in caves and ruins, and are frequently accompanied by dogs, coyotes, or jackals. If more than 50 are encountered, 30% of them will be female and 30% will be pups. Females fight as orcs and the pups fight as goblins. For every 50 encountered, there will be a pack leader with 3 hit dice and an armor class of 16. If 200 or more are encountered, a warlord with 5 hit dice and an armor class of 18 will command the overall horde. And if you don't like the stats or the numbers, change them for your world. But this is giving you an idea of how to form encounters and what you could find possibly in a gnoll culture or society or army or roving band or whatever. Cruel and sadistic, gnolls stalk their prey like their animal cousins. They always use superior numbers and instinctively use flanking tactics. If attacking a large group, they will launch sudden fierce attacks with few of their number to scatter the foe. Then smaller attack groups will fall upon the separated enemies, focusing on the young and the weak, and annihilate them slowly and painfully. They prefer to use flails, morning stars, and maces, and wear patched-together studded armor with large steel shields. Pack leaders and warlords wear better armor and often wield whips. Gnolls do not suffer loss well, being cowards at heart, and if 20% of their number are wounded or slain, they usually retreat from combat. If a warlord is slain, the strongest pack leader will assume control and immediately retreat. Don't think you have to memorize all this. If you don't want the battles to go this way, you don't have to. If you want to actually make it so that they're more resolute and say, no, 20%, my gnolls are going to stick around until they suffer 50% casualties, and you lean into it, then lean into it. Have fun with it. Anyway, so we come back here. Let's level up. Let's level up our fighter here. And what happens on a level up? Well, with a fighter, oh, we went to Druid. Here we go. With a fighter, every time we level up, we get a D10 plus or minus con bonus hit points. And you can also see that our 2-hit rises with every level. And isn't that nice? You can see that we've needed to grind up a lot of goblins to reach 2nd level, let alone 3rd. But hey, we're getting there one goblin at a time. So let's jump up to 4th level, okay? Goblin of Gygaxanor, can I have you roll 2d10 in chat, please? Since our original was a die roll, what we're going to do, we use the rule in the player's handbook where for every level you could roll the d10 equal to con mod plus 1 and take the highest. Now, in the Castle Keepers, which is kind of like a DMG, it offers alternate rules. This is a section on different ways to generate attribute modifiers instead of just rolling 3d6. There are ways to scale things if you want to have all the characters be like more high fantasy heroic. You want to try out something different. Then the Castle Keeper's Guide is a good extension of that. But we're gonna keep that. We're gonna keep this player's handbook. Keep 6 or 6. You know what? Let's keep the 6. Now we don't have a con bonus, so it is what it is. Artemis Rose Moon, will you please roll 2d10 in chat? How many hit points do we get at level 3? We might have lost her. Wolf Queen Belladonna, are you out there? If so, can I get a 2d10 roll? I've lost her too. Oh. Alright, Tiamos Frio steps up and gives us either a 4 or a 4. I'll take the 4. Game Master's Vault, if you're out there, may I please have a 2d10 from you? And as we hit this big level of 4. Yeah, howdy to you, Tio. I regret running out of beverage. All right, we don't have GMV. Who else is out there? Who's hanging out and hasn't rolled yet? Iron Chef, Hero Dragon, Xbox Aaron, Jacance, Demon Quiller. All right, survival, exclamation point, 2d10, please. It lands on an 11 or a 5. Well, in this case, survival. I guess it's your choice or 5. How many hit points would you like us to get at 4th level? Or you can re-roll by typing exclamation point 1d10. Well, I look forward to it, Tio. Lands on a 5, so it's a 5 or a 5. Wow, you all are pretty consistent with your repeated numbers. Excellent. Hey, Dragon Blast. So we've defeated we've defeated enough goblins to get 8,501 experience points. If you want to do things by milestone or something, you can as well. Now, the different classes do have different thresholds for leveling up. It is that's a kind of a throwback concept to older systems as well. Does that mean it's bad? No. Is it there for a reason? Probably in a power sense. Having classes kind of layered differently probably makes sense. But throwing that out there for you all to know. All right. So, our bonus goes up to a 4 at level 4. Our hit point total is now at 11, 15. Yeah, we have 20 hit points. Now, we haven't upgraded our armor, and we're still using the same old halberd that we always have. You know, our good old goblin-slaying halberd. So this stays the same. Hi, Mana Buns. We haven't pumped up our strength or anything. And you might go, oh, well, so we don't get the ability to do that? That might happen in the course of a game. But when it comes down to an attribute check, you actually add your level. So every level it's going up. Anyway, we'll get to that. So we're level 4, nice and easy. We have 20 hit points, and we get a new ability, Combat Dominance, 1 extra attack against 1 hit die or less monsters. We are even better at goblin slaying. Less than or equal to 1 hit die mobs. Yes, Mana Buns, it is a Jyorn Smythe. We are in a fantasy world. It is Jyorn Smythe. I would have to check about elves and dwarves and all that, Dragon Blast, and we can do that when we make our next character here. So congratulations, we're level 4. Our hit points have gone up. Our to hit bonus has also gone up. And if we're still slaying goblins, we get +1 extra attack if the monster is 1 or less hit die. And you can see how this scales. Pretty straightforward. We get our weapon specialization increases at 7, and it goes on from there. Now you'll notice after level 10, we have a controlled hit point gain, and it's not rolled or fixed. If you want to change that, you can, but kind of like in D&D, obviously, after a particular level, things can start getting very, very wonky or off balance. And I'm presuming that this was done to try and preserve things and keep it scalable. Now, if you're going, oh, but you know, I don't get these cool extra things. Remember, you can borrow actions from other classes if it's circumstantial, if your castle keeper allows it, and you're getting better at making attribute checks because your level is getting added into those rolls. So these are things like skills that are attributed to an attribute check. These are your saves. So you may not have a specified minutia of something, but the scaling is so much easier to do as you're leveling up. Here we get level 13 all the way up to 24 as things continue, and you see here you only get 2 hit points at this stage. Your 2 hit bonus keeps going up. Man, we have slayed many goblins to get to that point. Extra 6 attacks against 1 hit die or less monsters. So yeah, we're just absolutely pounding them. And you would get more treasure. That could influence your armor class. That might influence other things, other upgrades. 4,000, that's at least 2 goblins. And congratulations, Jyorn Smythe is a level 4 fighter. Yay. It was that easy. The abilities will flow. All right, now that we've explored this, we've made our level 4 human fighter. I'm going to get up, and I absolutely have to refresh this because my throat is starting to get very raw. For any of you just coming in, I've been fighting kind of like a sinus drip thing, whatever, ears, nose, throat thing. I got to keep things not getting tore up. So I'm going to take a quick break. I have a fresh character sheet here, and with your all's help, Dragon Blast, Mana Buns, Survival, TO, everyone who's here, why don't we roll for a non-human, non-fighter character and level them up after level 1. Oh, excellent. I'm glad that worked for you then, GMV. Pardon. All right, so I'll be right back. Hold on tight, just a couple minutes. We're going to come back, and we're going to make another character together.